What is going on, gunfighters? Saddle up for another episode of Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. So, gunfighters, today, the State of the Gun Union Address. Yes, a play on the State of the Union Address, but what's going on in the gun world in 2023? That's what we're going to talk about today. Also want to throw in a quick reminder, doing a giveaway for a really cool fixed blade knife and sling bag, bailout bag. That is to be raffled off to one of the patrons that joins this month. That's the month of January in the year of our Lord 2023. So you might want to go check that out. Should be a link for the website in the show notes, goodshepherdtraining.com, goodshepherdtraining.com. You can go to the Patreon page. There's a link right there from Good Shepherd Training. A lot of that stuff is just for patrons, but there's several things on there that everybody can view if they just go to the Patreon page to give you an idea of kind of what Patreon is. Anyway, enough about that. We'll start getting into the bio and then the show. I just wanted to remind you about the giveaway, the raffle for those two items, because January is quickly coming to a close. First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. God has blessed me to do many things in my life, for I could do nothing apart from Him. U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, did a couple of tours in Iraq. As an assaultman, after my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also did several years in law enforcement, LAPD. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency. That's all I'll say about that. Been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion and West Coast Regional Rifle Champion. Won more shooting competitions with the talent that God's given me than I can actually remember. Was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. Our primary job, the reason we primarily existed, was to stop active shooters. I got the opportunity to head up and be the commander of that team. I grew up around guns, hunting and shooting, and competing at a very early age. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast, and bear and elk and all manner of things. I've even been a professional big game hunter and guide. But again, most importantly, I'm a Christian. And I am your host, Michael Melito. Welcome to Gunfighter Life. So, I thought about doing a SHOT Show review episode. And I thought, there's a lot of other people that did SHOT Show review episodes. So I don't really want to do that in that manner. I don't want to do what everybody else is already doing. I did not go to SHOT Show this year. I'd watched a bunch of the footage and everything. I have been to SHOT Show. I was paid to go to SHOT Show at one point for my career and everything else. I have been to SHOT Show. I do enjoy SHOT Show. I'm not one of those guys that's going to be like, I'm so cool, SHOT Show is lame. The SHOT Show is pretty cool. I like SHOT Show. I probably liked it more because I was paid to do it instead of having to pay to go to it, to be fair. I like seeing all the gun community kind of go there. I also like the diversity of SHOT Show. Hopefully one of the things you like about this podcast is it's not just about tactical stuff. And by God's grace, I've been blessed to do a lot of tactical stuff, a lot more than a lot of people. By God's grace, if you listen to the bio, He's certainly blessed me with the street cred to be able to talk about that with real-world first-hand experience. But I also love hunting. I could, likewise, with the things God's blessed me to do entire podcasts on backwoods and backcountry and all manner of hunting with real-world first-hand experience. I like the mix. I like both, and I think that I should probably do a whole podcast on this. They feed into each other. Some of the greatest soldiers throughout history individually and as cultures were great hunters and warriors. The Mongols, the Spartans, the Romans, right? They did both. I think that's part of it. I like both those aspects of it, and I like both of those things at SHOT Show. I like that I can see a finely made double rifle for hunting. I can see the latest tactical innovations. So instead of doing one just on SHOT Show 2023, all the things and footage I've seen and new things that I've seen come out, I thought I would do one on the gun industry and the state of things. The state of the firearms union, if you will, address. Trends I see, trends that I see that I like, and trends that I see that I don't like. And you don't have to agree with me, right? Hopefully you tune into this because you value my opinion, real world first-hand experience. That doesn't mean you have to agree with me on everything. You don't have to agree with me on this. That's fine. Hopefully you'll listen with an open mind. I'm going to start out with trends that I don't really like. And then I'm going to end on a positive note, trends that I like. Because I'd rather do that than the reverse. Let's start with the hunting community. For years, it's kind of been this trend of this super long range, high BC, let's say sniper type hunting of big game animals. And I love hunting. I have no apologies for slaying beasts, spilling their blood on the ground, and eating them. Don't even try and dress it up and say, oh, a harvest. No, I kill things and I eat them. And I don't apologize for that. I'm a man. I have no problem with that. You want to pay somebody else to do your dirty work? You want to go down to Walmart and buy a chicken somebody else killed or beef somebody else slaughtered? That's fine. I do that too sometimes. But if I can kill it myself, I got no problem getting my hands dirty. And I don't apologize for that. I'm a hunter. And I applaud anybody getting out there and getting their own meat. However that is. I'm not putting this down, but for years we've seen them full swing this super long range hunting. These rifles and gear and computers geared towards taking animals that I would say beyond traditional hunting distances. I would call that 300 to 400 yards, out past 450, 500, even 1,000 yards. And if people want to do that, that's fine, but we've seen a giant swing in tons of gun companies and tons of products towards that. I'd say way disproportional, because I think the hunting community as a whole, that's a minority. Even me, who loves Western hunting, who has been a professional big game hunter and guide and hunted all over the West and lived all over the West, that's not generally how I hunt. I love to spot and stalk hunt. I love to still hunt. And the vast majority of the population lives east of the Mississippi, and even if they go west of the Mississippi to do those beautiful Western hunts, which I love, and they can get longer shots, they might do that every once in a while, but I imagine most of the hunters that live east of the Mississippi do most of their hunting east of the Mississippi. And for a lot of people, especially for the average person living in the southeast or the northeast that lives in a people hive or in suburbia that has to hunt public land, a modern day yeoman farmer, anybody that's below the modern landed gentry in the East Coast. If you're part of the landed gentry and you have thousands or hundreds of acres, or you're well connected into that small social club, you might have access to really big pieces of land with really long shots. But for the average person hunting east of the Mississippi, and I would say that's the majority of the population, even big chunks of places out west, not everywhere is wide open, you're not going to be shooting a lot of times past 100 yards, let alone past 200 yards, and 300 yards, just even seeing an animal is unlikely. It's because of the nature of the topography, right? The kind of terrain that it is doesn't permit that kind of hunting. We see giant trends in all these big gun companies and ammo companies to farther and farther and farther. You gotta have a bullet with a BC of 0.57, and if it's less than that, it's just not even good for anything. And these rifles that are very accurate, to be fair, and I love accurate rifles, but they're so big and heavy. I love competition shooting too, and I've done quite a bit of precision rifle shooting. That's how I cut my teeth. To be fair, that was before I think PRS even existed, or if it was existed, I'd never heard of it. That's not how I hunt. I'm not running to a sandbag and throwing down an 18-pound rifle. I'm hiking up mountains with a rifle. An 18-pound rifle is all but useless to me. So I see this giant trend. What about the guy who spot and stalk hunts? What about the guy who's hunting a small plot of land on public land in Pennsylvania or New Hampshire, Connecticut, Virginia, West Virginia, Georgia? What good is a 18-pound, 500 to 1,000 yards or even beyond rifle going to do them in hunting? Or even if they're buying it for a tactical situation, in what place are you going to even be able to do that? It's hard enough to find a good range back east where you can just go out and shoot, let alone go out and shoot 1,000 yards. And it seems like so many of the new products and so much of the new guns and ammo are geared towards that. And it seems to me like a very niche thing. And I was hoping that it would kind of die down and we'd see more of other kinds of hunting come back into the mainstay. Where are all the new, Woods carbines coming out? I know there's a small growth in the straight-walled cartridge, but that's mostly because of legislation. I'm not a big fan of restrictions due to legislation. A lot of these things are called primitive hunts, but they're doing brand new guns and ammo that didn't even exist 5 years ago. I don't really call that primitive in my own vernacular. I'd love to see something like a retro hunt where you had to hunt with guns that existed 75, 90, whatever the cutoff is, right? An old 30-30 with iron sights, either the original one or a modern brand new but exactly the same iteration of that. Or a 30-06 or 270 bolt action with iron sights. And no camo. You got to hunt in jeans or khakis and a plaid flannel shirt or something like it, a tweed jacket that existed back in days of yore. That would be a really cool hunt to me. I'm not really a big fan of this forced legislation that is supposed to be primitive, but it just requires newer and newer Gucci gear to be competitive. But aside from those new straight walls, which you might consider bush carbines, like where are all the Woods carbines? Like all the classic Remington 760s and Winchester Model 88s and Ruger Deerfield carbines. I would love to see that stuff. Either those models or a new version of it, right? All the new stuff coming out, you can't make a light, handy, fast, either pump action or good semi-auto hunting carbine in 357 Magnum or 44 Magnum. I would really love to see that. More than I'd love to see another 18-pound steel carbon fiber chassis giant PRS type rifle marketed for hunting. Not that they shouldn't exist, they should exist, but I think that there's a lot more of those for a very tiny niche market. I would love to see that pendulum swing back. Especially if we want to get more people into hunting. Talked recently, it's not out yet, about drive hunts and how great that is and how tribal and primitive and awesome it is to hunt like that. I like to hunt like that too. But I think if you want to get people into hunting, your average person, because let's be fair, as much as I love living in the country and living off grid, most people live in suburbia. Most people live in what I would call people hives, right? I would consider those draw western kind of guided hunts, which I love too, kind of again for that modern landed gentry, the fairly wealthy. If you're trying to get the average man into hunting to put meat on the table, I don't think that's the best way to go about it. Getting an average person to go on a drive hunt, even if they're not armed, just to be part of it, just to be a pusher or a driver safely. Or get kids into hunting where they can go out and hunt and not have to be super quiet, because let's be fair, kids aren't really great at being super quiet. They're great at making noise in the woods. Let's have them do what they're good at. Or geared towards, affordable, effective Woods carbines to get men out there. There's a lot of eastern states that are just a ton of deer. Trying to find a way to get a new generation of hunters. As much as I would like to just have the woods all to myself, that's not really fair. I would love to see a lot of new hunters, and I don't think the super long range, really expensive, high barrier to entry kind of long range western hunting is the way to get most people that live east of the Mississippi into hunting. And there's plenty of deer, so let's get some people out there and get some meat on the table. Anyway, I talked about the pendulum swinging that way. Let's talk about a trend that I really do like. For a long, long time, it seemed like every week and almost everything that came out was a brand new plastic, fantastic polymer striker-fired tactical Tupperware, whatever you want to call it. It was a polymer striker-fired handgun of some sort. I tried to differentiate it in so many different ways. Oh, it's got different slide cuts. It's got forward cocking serrations. And it was just one plastic polymer striker-fired handgun after another. When hammer-fired and or metal guns have so much to offer, I just did, I didn't just do it, I just re-put it out because I thought it was good. Put out, it had been a while, 1911s for the modern gunfighter. There's still a lot to offer there. It was nice to see, because I was running them as a professional for a long time, companies coming out with more double-stacked, what I would call modernized 1911s, but still keeping a lot of what makes the 1911 great. That beautiful straight back trigger, that wonderful operating system. For for the 9mm, for common magazines, that's great. I love seeing the pendulum swing the right way or back more towards normal. I'm sure there'll be new striker-fired handguns coming out. Don't worry about that if you love polymer striker-fired handguns. But a lot of manufacturers are like discontinuing and stopping making their metal hammer-fired guns and pumping out different polymer striker-fired handguns. Beretta went that way, and we see Beretta this year introduced quite a few new hammer-fired, classic metal hammer-fired guns. And I'd much rather see that than see them come out with their next version of a polymer striker-fired handgun. It makes me happy that Beretta came out with a new version of their 84 or whatever it was, and a new version of the 92. In fact, that's exactly the gun I was wanting when I was last looking for a carry gun, when I was deciding, okay, optics, I'm finally going to get on board. I've tested them for months. I've tried them. It's a good system. It's a tactical advantage. I'm going to start running optics on my handgun. And I looked and looked. And they came out with the Berettas that took optics. They came out with the single action that took optics. And I was like, great. And it was steel framed. And I thought, it's going to be too big and bulky to carry. If I was going to carry a gun that big for everyday carry as my CCW gun, I just carry my STI 2011. Just a little bit too big. So I ended up getting a single action only SIG Legion cut for an optic. Now this year I see they finally come out with a single action only Beretta 92 cut for an optic. The 92, I think XI they call it. Fantastic. Great idea. I love that. They also came out with a new version of their old double stack 380s, which was a great gun. And they had it cut for an optic. When I saw that, it made me really happy. How were you going to come out with a gun in 2023 and not have it cut for an optic? I was kind of happy. Again, I like 1911s. I like hammer-fired steel or metal guns. Aluminum, alloy, whatever you want to call it. And Savage came out with their 1911s. I thought that's really cool. Savage makes good stuff. They're an American company. I like 1911s. But they're not cut for an optic. And you're thinking, why would you come out with a brand new design? I mean, it's a 1911, but it's their version of it. They're already doing different slide cuts and stuff. Why wouldn't you cut the slide for an optic? I don't know, but it's nice to see, again, the pendulum swing back. I saw a lot of new hammer-fired guns come out. Metal hammer-fired guns. I like that. That makes me happy. That's a good thing, I think. I think polymer striker-fired guns have their place. They're cheap. They're easy to manufacture. They're simple. And for a new shooter or somebody getting into handguns or just getting into concealed carry or general issue police gun, I think they're great for that. For somebody that really wants to wring the most out of their handgun and be an expert at operating a handgun, I think that the hammer-fired guns really have a lot to offer. And it's nice to see that not everybody has forsaken those and gone the way of the polymer striker fire. I figured at some point somebody was going to come out with a red dot for a revolver. It happened to be Taurus. Taurus has always been kind of known for doing stuff innovative. They just have never really traditionally been known for good quality control. So that is what it is. It's nice to see people doing it. Hopefully other companies will come out with optics on a revolver, especially for good hunting revolvers. I think as opposed to the defensive revolver, it might have some advantages like that, but I think you're going to see a lot more advantage being able to mount red dots, or red dots is not actually the correct term, whatever kind of optical aiming device on a handgun. I would like to see more of that come out on hunting handguns. I love handgun hunting. How cool would it be to see a Colt Python come out with something like that, or Smith & Wesson Model 29? Something really cool and innovative, Rock Island Armory came out with their new gun, which is hammer-fired. Again, I like that. different kind of operating system than this traditional tilting barrel. I like that. The issue I have with it is it's very new and innovative, and it's not that Rock Island Armory is a small company. If they're going to come out with a radical design like that, it's going to have to be proven before I'm going to trust my life to it. So we'll see how it does. I want it to do good. I'm not going to rush out and start using it as a carry gun. You know, if it's that good, it'll be around in a couple of years, and if it's not, then it won't. It's cool to see some innovation. Hopefully it doesn't go the way of the Hudson, where it was a really good design, I think. It just, for other reasons, didn't do very well. Speaking of that, it would be really cool to see like Ruger or something buy the rights to that gun and make it again. Company that can make things at a large scale affordable and usually has really good quality control. Now I'll talk about a few things I did see come out. They came up in the chat, or I saw that they either came out at SHOT Show or came out recently. One of the biggest things, going back to hunting thing that I saw that came out, ironically, that I was most excited about, was Marlin coming back out with their 336. It's been around for so long and it killed so many deer, and when Remington, that whole fiasco when they bought Marlin, now that Ruger has it, them coming back out with the 336. 336 is great. It's always kind of been this rival with the 94, but if you want to mount optics and have a good lever action deer carbine, the 336 is awesome. The 336 in 30-30 is all most Eastern Woods hunters will ever need, and it'll serve them far better than an 18-pound PRS rifle with a 5 to 25 power scope. You know, a Marlin 336 with a 2.5x scope or just a good old iron sights is just been putting meat on the table for generations, and it's good to see that come back. I was really excited. Ironically, one of the most things I was excited about was that old gun coming back. Get you one of those and a red flannel shirt and a Jones hat and render under Caesar to get your hunting license and go put some meat on the table. That's a great thing. One of the guys in the chat posted what I would consider a really good all-around hunting gun. I mean, I'm Italian, I like Italian, but made by Franchi. I would like to see American companies doing more rifles like this, but I would consider it all-around good bolt hunting rifle, not a super long-range one. A Franchi Momentum All-Terrain Elite. It's a cool-looking rifle. I like it. I mentioned this in the beginning, but not by name, the Oracle Arms. Seems like a really cool gun. I am a big fan of the STIs. Have been for a long time. Now, if I was going to trust my life to it, I would still go with the STI, now Staccato, because they're around and they're proven. Again, if you just wanted to get it to run it as a range toy for a couple of years, my general rule is 3 years to see if something's going to work and whatever before I trust my life to it. I'll do less than that if it's already a proven design. I don't want to be a beta tester in a gunfight. Let somebody else figure that out. But assuming it's good and proven and works well and is reliable, it's a really cool concept. I like that. The things I don't love about my STI Staccatos is paying $150 for a magazine. And STI Staccato can be crazy reliable. Every bit as reliable if you know what you're doing as a Glock 19. Yes, I said it. But you have to know how to tune your extractor. You have to know how to tune your magazines. A lot of new shooters that have gotten in the last couple of years don't know how to do that. They just deal with platforms where you don't have to tune magazines and extractors and all that stuff. Think of your, modern handguns of more of that like out-of-the-box sports car where you just get it and drive it fast. Whereas the STIs and the 1911 base guns, Staccatos, are more like your old hot rods. Like you can get them to go crazy fast, but you have to tinker with them and toy with them and get them running just right. You're old enough to remember having carburetor cars where you had to tune the carburetor depending on different things. It's more like that. But if you know what you're doing and you can get them running right, they can be crazy reliable. This Oracle Arms takes more modern magazines. Maybe that will alleviate some of that problem. That would be pretty cool. And there was another company, forgive me, I saw it in passing, it takes Glock mags. I don't know how well that's going to work because I'm not an engineer. I don't pretend to be one. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But a Glock has a very different grip angle. It's a more extreme grip angle than most other handguns, especially 1911s. And that's going to mess with the feed geometry and feed lips, I think. And I don't know how they're going to get that to work. Maybe they can. Maybe they get it to work just fine. To me, it seems like more of a hurdle than the 320 mags because the 320 has a very similar grip angle. It's not new for SHOT Show, but it's kind of halfway there, right? It's a metal frame, but it's still striker fire, and I love M&Ps. I have won more shooting competitions with an M&P than any other handgun, far more than I can ever remember. I like the M&P. I like it a lot. It's a great platform. They came out with it with a metal frame. That's pretty cool. Just a random thought, what I'd like to see come out, if you don't know, the SIG 320 is super popular. There was a gun before that flopped, that was almost identical, that wasn't super popular. It even takes the same frame and everything, I do believe. That's the SIG P250. It came out, it was a double action only. Polymer chassis system, but it wasn't striker fired, it was hammer fired. It was double action only. I would love to see them come out with that, or whatever it is, take that number and add it with 320, 250 plus 320 divided by 2, whatever that number happens to be. The SIG 285, if they don't already have a number designation for that, and have a single action only. Reintroduce the 250 or something akin to it in single action only. All the cool modularity, but with a thumb safety and single action only. Amazing trigger pull with a lot of the advantages and the same mags as the 320. The same kind of grip frames because they're pretty well established. All that stuff. But in a single action only version. That would be really cool. That I don't think exists, but it'd be cool if that came out. Now don't get me wrong, I like guns and gun stuff. I mean, I have a podcast called Gunfighter Life. I'm a professional gunfighter most of my adult life. I hope you appreciate that this podcast is not me telling you gotta have the latest and greatest 18-pound super long range rifle that's half MOA or you can't kill deer. You have to have the brand new thermal optics and nods and this thing and that thing to be combat effective. I love guns. I love them for their beauty and their simplicity and their practicality. Some of these new guns coming out I look at and I think to myself, that's about as practical as a frying pan made out of a block of ice. It may look cool, but when it comes time to actually use it, it's going to be a mess. I like good guns that are also practical, that are effective for defending myself, my family, defending those around me that are weaker and need protection, for putting meat on the table. I like that. If you like that kind of perspective, if you like that here, that don't take bribes trying to tell you that this thing you need because somebody's giving it to me for free or paying me to tell you that. If you like that honesty, hopefully you'll appreciate the podcast and decide to support it. There should be a link for Patreon. That's the most honest way that I know of. Like, you can say, I value this content in this podcast and this person's time. I'm going to step up and support the podcast. If you want to, again, there should be a link in the show notes for Patreon, or you can just go to goodshepherdtraining.com if you want to check out some more stuff. That'll get you there too. There's a link. goodshepherdtraining.com. If you have it in you as a man to support, then support. If not, listen and don't feel guilty about it. If you want to help for free, you may consider sharing whatever episode you think is relevant with friends you think might like it. Leave a review, hit some stars, just easy free ways if you want to support that way. But hopefully you'll consider supporting on Patreon. Do a lot of cool insider content and stuff like that too. Anyway, with that, I'm going to roll into the tactical tip of the day and then the tactical verse of the day. So, how many companies at SHOT Show introducing these new high-end super long range rifles introduced a shooting bench that is a backpack? If you do not plan on packing a shooting bench into the field and sandbags and everything else, practice shooting in other positions. It's good to zero your rifle off a bench. I say again, it's good to zero your rifle off a bench, and I love rifles that can shoot nice tiny little clover leaves. I love it. It's amazing. It makes me happy. I was going to say, you know how many animals I shot off a bench? 0, but that wouldn't be true. I've shot plenty of prairie dogs and stuff off what you might consider a bench. How many big game animals I've ever shot off a bench? 0. Elk, deer, 0. All the ones I've ever taken, which is more than I can remember. 0. Tactical tip. Practice. And you can do most of this, you can do all of this dry fire. Dry fire. If you know your gun's zeroed for a certain distance, once it's zeroed, there's a time for live fire, but dry fire. Watch that reticle, watch that front sight, whatever the case may be. And practice standing. Standing. Yes, you shoot deer from the standing sometimes, and elk from the standing sometimes. Practice from the standing position. Practice from the kneeling position, from the sitting position, from the prone position. Practice from a hasty rest. Practice going up to a tree and making a rest on it, either with the tree itself or with your hand, or shooting on a log, or shooting on top of your pack if you're talking about Western style hunting. It shouldn't have to cost you any money. If you already have the rifle, just practice. Practice shooting from standing, from kneeling, from a hasty rest. Cool if you can shoot a half-inch group off sandbags on a bench. But again, unless you're hiking that stuff into the field, that doesn't have a lot of applicability when you're hunting. Grab your hunting pack, throw it down on the ground, drop down on it, and practice dry firing like that. As a professional guide, I heard all the time, I didn't have a shot. And I wouldn't tell this to the client because I wanted to instill their confidence, but I was thinking you had about a dozen shots. You just aren't familiar with shooting anywhere other than on a bench. There's no benches out here. I would rather have a guy with a well-worn 308 or 30-06 shot 2-inch groups, which today we would consider abysmal, but that can shoot good groups standing and kneeling, than the guy that has a half MOA rifle that has only ever shot it off a bench. If you want to be an effective hunter, putting meat on the table, that's far more important. How fast can you go from that rifle being slung to standing with it in your shoulder in a good position and get good hits? So practice it. Dry fire is great for tactical stuff. By God's grace, except for Sabbath where I rest, dry fire every day. And you should too. And some of that, if you're a hunter, I think should be with your hunting equipment in plausible, likely hunting positions. That's your tactical tip of the day. Tactical verse of the day. From the book of Philippians. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your gentleness be made known to all men. The Lord is at hand. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Thanks, men. Have a blessed day.